Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Harry Brailsford from SMB Nation. You are attending the quarterly analyst report. So technically, this is the fourth quarter MSP Analyst report. It's November 30th. We have just a few hours. Do you know where your earnings are? More importantly, you only got one more month. You better spin that hamster wheel faster, because we got 1 month till the end of the year. It went quick as usual. Let's introduce SMB Nation. If you're not familiar with SMB Nation, we're a community of MSPs and partners historically predicated upon the small business server product. As you can see on the left, that's a photo we took a few years ago for our 15th anniversary. That's Jennifer Hallmark in the upper left, and she's in the radio control room today. But more importantly, today what I wanted to do was show you a little math addition I did at timeanddate.com. So I typed in the day that I started SMB Nation, which was after Halloween in 1999. I exited a regional public accounting firm, opened up shop that Monday, went and printed some business cards, and the rest is history. And good golly, Miss Molly, what do you know? It's 18 years and 1 month. We're in technically our 19th year. It goes fast. I'm going to circle back to this conversation with the salary survey. Okay, so file this away about 18 years, because you're going to see some parallels to you, the listener, in terms of how long you've been in the industry. SMB Nation participates in a variety of ways in the industry, all the way from historically I had the MVP designation for Small Business Server, through some different trade associations and awards, so CompTIA, shout out to CompTIA. And then finally, we've participated in some of the magazines in print. Now, what's interesting here, I just had this conversation the other day, literally 2 days ago, about the magazines that are no longer in print, including our own SMB PC magazine that we took out of print. I believe it was 2012. But guys, I didn't know I was missing business solutions until I missed it. I didn't know I was missing VSR until I missed it. So it's always interesting to kind of reflect back on what's still in print. And we have Channel Pro, Redmond Channel Partner, and CRN are still in print. God bless them. God bless them. That's a tough business model. So we're going to have some introductions in a moment as we go through. So we have myself, Harry Brailsford at SMB Nation. We have JAY MCBAIN, and I'm going to let him introduce himself on the next slide, but today he is a principal analyst for global channels at Forrester. We have Grace Schroeder, who's going to pitch in with her colleague Thomas Beck. She is the CEO of Slinger. Real interesting stuff there. And then Brian Garut from MyCloud IT. We're going to hear from Brian at the midpoint. And by the way, like public radio, it's because of the generous support of MyCloud IT that we're on the air. And so we thank Brian and MyCloud IT. Let's jump right into the agenda. As always, it's a full agenda. You will get a copy of the deck, and you'll get some additional links. I'm going to do a shout out or call out to some links, for example, in the salary survey results. So you're going to get that in the thank you letter tomorrow, but we will touch on all of these. So it's a full hour. And unfortunately, we have a hard stop at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is good for all of us. Get back to work and really try and pump up those earnings in the next 4 or 5 hours before the end of business on the 30th. So we start with where in the world is JAY MCBAIN? And Jay, I'll let you introduce yourself, but I think we met when you were a director at Lenovo a few years ago. Maybe if you want to introduce yourself and pick it up from your time at Lenovo through Autotask, Channelize, and now Forrester, and then I'm going to ask you a few questions.
All right, sounds good, Harry, and thanks for having me. And you may or may not remember this, but you were the one that broke the news after 17 years of IBM and Lenovo running channels and SMB and a number of other things. I moved to Autotask in upstate New York, and on the back of a napkin on Facebook, here comes Harry with the breaking news. And
I was skiing in Jackson Hole, my friend. I wrote that in a lodge, believe it or not.
So that started a swing. I moved up and worked with Bob Gottgart at Autotask for 9 months. We left the company, and Bob and I and Dave Gagan and Sherry Gottgart started Channelize. 5 years, 3 different pivots, wonderful startup experience, but from social networking to mobility to predictive analytics and AI, got to study the channel from almost every different aspect. And along the way, kept my blog going. I think I have 200,000 readers on my blog. And then, it came time to step away from Channelize, and I started looking at, the work that Tiffany Bova did at Gartner, and Tim Harmon at Forrester, and Laz Gonzalez did at Sirius, and I kind of thought that that's what I do. I like to research. I like to analyze, the channel at a different level, and I like to travel and speak to audiences and work with partners and work with thousands of channel clients, and they're kind of paying me for living the dream. So that's where I am now at Forrester.
Yeah. I mean, I've always felt that way with SMB Nation. In high school I threw keggers, and then at SMB Nation, Jay, I got paid to throw keggers. They're called conferences.
There you go.
So I always looked at it as an extension of that. So what are your beats, if you will, or niches at Forrester? Because typically an analyst will key in on defense sector, government, or EDU, or and I realize you're in a different realm, but what are the top 2 or 3 niches that you track?
Yeah, this is interesting. 75% of all world trade goes indirectly. Okay. So you buy a car from a dealer, you bought your last TV from a retailer, you bought your last jar of peanut butter from a grocer. Pretty much everything you buy as a business and as a person goes through some sort of supply chain. And very little of what you buy is actually direct from the manufacturer. So with as big and important as the channel topic is, partnerships, alliances, it gets very little in terms of radio time. And that's my niche, is all industries, all 27 industries, all countries, all 196 countries, but representing that 75% of the world that doesn't go direct to customer. So it's a very big niche, but in the world it's a very small one when it comes to looking at analyst firms.
And I know you live in Albany. Now, does Forrester have an office in Albany, or you travel so much, or you work from home a little bit? I'm kind of curious, where do you work from?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've always been in an office, and now I'm actually in a home office. So, like a lot of my colleagues and a lot of others in the industry, including you, Harry. I mean, we live out of airports, and we live at conferences, and we live very virtually. So, the first thing we check is the internet broadband connection, and the second thing we check is if there's a roof and running water.
Yep. Okay. Finally, I believe you're from Canada. You recently became an American citizen, if I tracked on Facebook. So first of all, is that correct? And then second of all, you went to LSU. That surprised me. 2 questions.
3 questions. I am Canadian, and I moved to the U.S. In 2009, and that was in North Carolina. 2010, I moved up to New York, is what you put on a napkin. And I became a citizen in January of this year. I thought I was going to become a citizen under Barack Obama, and that's my date. And then they bumped it 2 weeks, so I became a citizen under Donald Trump. So I had 7 very nervous days of being a in-between citizen and Visa card holder, but it ended up working, and I am a card-carrying, U.S. passport-holding American.
There you go. And you went to LSU. My goodness.
So my MBA is at LSU. So LSU offers an MBA in entrepreneurship, family business, and basically channels. So it's a new course, and it's one of the only universities in the world. And I might be one of the first people in the world that have an MBA in the channel.
Yeah, I was going to say, that actually is cool. So let's move on.
Yes.
Oops, let me highlight the slide. There we go, the Datto Autotask merger. So folks, I did, I think it's 1,100 words on the Datto Autotask merger. I have a couple of videos that support it. If you want to go to smbnation.com and search on Datto and Autotask, you can bring up this blog. what I want to do is tell you a little bit about the blog and then have a dialogue with Jay, since he worked at Autotask, and maybe he can offer some perspective. But essentially, what it's being positioned as is I talked to the executives at Datto, and then just my own prior knowledge, is it's being positioned as an additive or accretive merger. It's a little tricky because, let's see, and Jay, you might have to help me about the chain of ownership, because it involved a private equity firm that owned Autotask, and they acquired Datto, then they merged the two together. And do you want to fill that gap? You could probably explain it better than me.
Yeah, and it's something I've been following very, very closely. So there's two types of channel software. There's channel software that partners run their businesses and manage customers with, and basically designed at the 600,000 IT resellers, VARs, managed service providers, solution providers, etc. around the world. That is one category of channel software. The other category of channel software is what vendors and manufacturers and distributors use to manage their partners. And that means incenting them and enabling them and communicating and co-marketing and co-selling. And there's about 8 different categories. I just published a channel software stack a few weeks ago showing the 100 companies that participate in that area. Yep, so the one common theme between these two major industries is that private equity is taking over. And if I were to look at Autotask, for example, Bob started the company around 2000, built one of the first SaaS companies of any type, and matured the company as SMB Nation. Really started to grow quickly, as did Autotask, as did the environment, which was this new managed service provider, working on a recurring revenue basis, using software such as remote management tools and PSA, or professional services automation, which Autotask, ConnectWise, TigerPaw at the time were the 3 choices. This was the industry. And as we fast forward to today, there's probably 10 layers of software, including security and backup and business continuity and compliance, that make up that suite of software that a partner uses today to manage their customers. And what private equity is now looking at, and many of these companies were venture backed, which got them to the point of where they were. But what private equity does is looks to make unicorns. And their definition of unicorn is a company that's worth $1 billion. And they're looking to put together complementary solutions that at some point will be acquired or go public. And if it gets acquired by a big player, think of a Salesforce or an IBM or a Microsoft that would buy a company like this for over $1 billion, or to go an IPO for a valuation well north of $1 billion, they look to build and mature an industry to build some winners. And in this channel software on the partner side, now we're starting to see 3 or 4 winners start to emerge. These are companies that are well beyond a PSA, they're beyond an RMM, they're starting to include, and this Datto piece is that piece where you're not only selling to a partner, but you're selling through a partner to their customers to solve kind of those 10 layers that I talked about.
Yeah. What about overlap between Datto and Autotask? So I touch on that in my blog briefly, that what does this do for ConnectWise partners that use Datto and vice versa? Do you have any comments on overlap in this merger?
Yeah, so overlap from a product and feature perspective was very, very little. So the amount of backup and file transfer and other things that Autotask did was very minimal, and the actual combination was very complementary. I'm going to say that 98% of the products continue untouched, which is a very nice way to merge companies. In terms of the market, I think what you're asking about is what does this do for open APIs? What does this do for other players? Like, there's hundreds of companies that compete across these 10 layers. They rely on Autotask, they rely on Datto, they rely on everyone playing nice in the sandbox. And what we've seen in other industries, that private equity has done this in the past, they're pretty well forced to play nice because that's what customers demand. The second a company starts to become proprietary and lock their doors to others, you start to see them affected in the marketplace. They start losing deals, they start losing some growth, and it's pretty much the market that dictates that they stay open. All companies in this transaction and others have publicly stated that nothing changes, and I think that the market is going to enforce that.
Yeah, and I'm going to continue to monitor. We'll move on. I'm going to continue to monitor this in terms of HQ1 and HQ2. You know, Albany versus I believe it's Norwalk, Connecticut. So we'll see where the management team lands. But folks, stay tuned for this. This story is an ongoing area of coverage. Quickly, don't want to dwell too much on this, but just a shout out to Microsoft Office 365. It was publicly announced November 1st. I had been ramping for a December 15th announcement. They surprised myself and others by about 6 weeks. So we did a webinar recently on this topic with our good friends over at SureWeb. And if you'd like to see the replay of this webinar, click on over to SMB Nation and click webinars. And I'll kind of leave it at that for today because I want to get to probably a more robust topic would be net neutrality. And folks, if you want to kind of read the definition, and then we have a thought leader, Carl Pellicek, is a big fan of net neutrality, Jonathan Freebird out of Microsoft. Their government organization, Microsoft, supports net neutrality. Jay, maybe you can fill in a couple of gaps that I don't mention on the screen. So we have the FCC taking up the net neutrality issue. Is that a Q4 issue? Is that something that's coming up? And if people want to submit their comments, they better hurry?
Yeah, it's very near term. You know, the leader of that group was an ex-lawyer for Verizon. So there's a feeling that there's a bias there, and you know, there's also a feeling that in today's political environment, you know, we don't know what's going to happen. It seems like common sense in a lot of cases has been thrown out the window, and what we all feel that you know ought to be something. Because if net neutrality ends, I mean, it's really the end of the internet as it was designed, and now we move into more of a capitalist built infrastructure where you know other people are making you know decisions what you see and read and how quickly you get to see and read.
Yeah, and Grace, let me bring you in if you're out there about net neutrality, because you are the CEO of a smaller ISV, Slinger, and so it's real clear how the telecoms benefit from the end of net neutrality, that they essentially make more money. And for the smaller developers, this is the concern I've been reading about, is about innovation with ISVs having low cost and high bandwidth access to the internet. So Grace, are you out there, and could you offer up some comments from your point of view?
So from our perspective, I'm not that frightened by it for ourselves. I'm frightened by it for all of the reasons you just mentioned. You know, as software as a service typically isn't pulling large file sizes. You know, we don't need a lot of bandwidth to operate well. I probably would think more around, you know, the data backup companies that are operating, you know, dragging large amounts of data over the internet on a frequent basis. I could see where they might have some cause for concern. It's, you know, I don't think that we're going to be a target for some time, because I think the real payload comes in being able to meter and charge for what streams on, you know, online. So that's kind of what I've been on it right now.
Yep. Well, my take, and then I have a question for Jay. So my take is, most of the listeners know I'm from Alaska, and Jay and I kid each other because he's from Canada, and yada yada yada. So when I go home to Alaska, I go home a couple times a year, and that's still what I would call, for lack of a better word, a metered connection. So it's a full step behind Seattle. In Seattle, we're kind of used to a buffet of bandwidth, and you just get used to it, and magic happens. I go up to Anchorage, and my brother, who I stay with, will be like, hey, dude, no, you can't watch that movie. What are you doing, man? No. I have to pay for that internet, the provider's GCI. And Jay, the question I have for you, I haven't been to Australia in some time. I know you were there recently after you started with Forrester. Is Australia still metered? Because I always felt that held them back a little bit in terms of the conversations we had, even with Small Business Server, certainly Office 365.
Yeah, I've actually been to Australia 3 times in the last 6 months. So other than my airline miles account, I'm getting some good traffic over there. But they, they have an interesting scenario where they're putting out a public network. People of Australia, the government there feels that the network bandwidth is almost a human right, which is interesting. You know, think of water, clean water. Think of, sewer systems. In the future of an information age, that pipe is, your access to democracy. It's your access to services, government services, and all other types of things. So they're treating it a little bit different as they go on. And I think that thinking's a little bit different than what you're seeing out of the United States, and different than what you're seeing out of Europe, for example. So this is a consumer issue for the first, I'm going to say, 18 months to 2 years. I agree with Grace that there's very little I think that you're going to see on the business side. Obviously, Hollywood is a business and everything else, but it really comes down to the consumer consumption models and how that's going to work. But the day that comes, and if this happened, and 2 years later, Dropbox comes out with an advertisement that says they're 10% faster than Datto, because somehow they hooked in with Verizon and AT&T, and they got this sweet deal, and that's allowed for them to meter Dropbox, at a faster pace than Datto. That becomes then a business issue, and I think this is going to play out in the consumer world, and I think the U.S., in terms of their thinking, is in the end, even if it gets taken away, it's going to become a political issue over the next election, and it's going to be restored.
I totally agree. It will not stand. You don't want to get between the angry masses and their shows that they're addicted to.
Yeah. Well, as they've said more than once up on the cable news channels, it's harder to take away a right that's already been given than to initiate the change. Jay, I know you're going to drop in just about 90 seconds to go to a meeting. So first of all, thank you for taking time out of your busy day over at Forrester. Hope to have you back in 2018, if you don't mind, man. That's really congratulations on your new gig.
Absolutely. The family at SMB Nation has always been welcoming with open arms, and it was the first community that I really joined, in the U.S. So I always have a very, very big piece of my heart for you and the team. So thank you.
Keep us on speed dial. Hey, Brian, before I go to your slide and we have a moment with our community support from your company, would you like to comment on net neutrality, because it's going to weave into your conversation, but that has to impact your business model. Am I off on that?
We have not gotten down into the weeds of net neutrality too much. We're letting things play out, and we appreciate the fact that you're spending this time to address this content, because it is very topical, and it does have an effect on us. I mean, in the end, when you start to access all of your data and all of your content over the internet in the cloud, it affects everyone. So it does affect us, but it's still early on in the kind of political process to see how it plays out, and thankful that we have smarter folks than me to really be going to bat for what we believe is the right way to approach the net neutrality conversation.
Well, there we go. So once again, a shout out for you being a supporter of SMB Nation. Brian, I hope I framed it up. What we're trying to do here, man, is we're trying to behave by providing real value-added content. The simple example is NPR. And NPR is underwritten by foundations and sponsors. And they're sponsors that align with the idea that, yes, let's support good content, let's support good webinars, and of course, let's tell our story along the way. So Brian, I'm going to go to your slide. You're up, my friend. Tell us, and just say next slide, please, sir, when you're ready for me to click.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Harry, for having us on. We really appreciate the time, and again, kudos to you for putting together such a great quarterly call to provide, you know, the content that your listeners are looking for. You're really out there on topic with the latest and greatest, and we appreciate you allowing us to be a part of it. So to start, you know, I'd like to just frame up who the heck is MyCloud IT. So if you are on this call today and you're not real sure who or what MyCloud IT is as a platform, we actually did a webinar a couple weeks back. We'd be happy to share all of the contents of that webinar so that you could get a recorded version and actually capture the full demonstration of the power of our platform. But really, in essence, our goal is to help partners drive profitability in Azure via cloud desktops and apps. And so, Harry, if you want to just flip to the next slide, I'll kind of walk through that at a very high level. So, you know, by enabling partners to really deliver via a simple-to-use dashboard, a simple-to-use platform, we can start to move SMBs and all the way up to enterprise into the cloud via the workspace as a service model. So our platform, quite simply, allows partners or IT administrators to kind of reduce the amount of time in building the infrastructure by up to 95%. And we can also provide at least a 30% savings on the Azure infrastructure by enabling auto-scaling and scheduling of virtual machines. So very cool. Please do come check us out. And at the end, you don't have to go and hire new experts or become a cloud expert yourself. You can, you know, you can bring your existing knowledge base and really use the simplicity that we provide to help drive profitability going into this next year. So that's all I have on kind of the overview. If you want to flip to the next slide, Harry.
Sure. And Brian, let me just take a moment while we're on this slide and people can kind of absorb it. First of all, folks, you're going to get the deck. Second of all, you're going to get the replay link to watch the webinar again. Brian, if you can fact check me and get the link over for that webinar. If you're referring to the one that we did together, I know you guys have other webinars too, but if you could fact check me and get me the links you would like me to send out tomorrow with the thank you letter, I appreciate that so people can follow up. Sure. And I will now take you to your other side. Oh, folks, be sure to use the questions feature for your questions. Okay, Brian, you're back on.
Excellent. Well, so I really just want to talk about two things heading into 2018 as we wrap up, you know, 2017 and look ahead to next year. There's a lot of cool stuff coming out, not only just from us, but from the Microsoft Remote Desktop Services team as well. So really just wanted to address that briefly. First and foremost, what's coming down the pipe from us is a brand new version of our platform. We'll call it vNext. And that's coming in February. And so there's some cool things that we're going to be able to enable in this new platform. To start, you know, we're going to help enable enterprise security through role-based access. We're also, something that's very cool is we're going to be providing a parent-child dashboard view. So what that means is that you can now white label the platform so that you can extend it to your customers and actually give them some of the monitoring and analytics that we'll provide to, you know, to give your customer something to actually see on a day in and day out basis regarding the performance and uptime of their environment. So this will help make things very sticky. We'll also include kind of a support ticketing system so that they can actually initiate support tickets there as well, with long-term integration with you know, whoever you're using for your ticketing systems today. And then lastly, we're going to provide some ease of management through image management and again going into more predictive analytics and monitoring and alerting so that you can stay out in front of any potential issues for your customers. So that's really what's coming out from MyCloud IT. If you're interested in learning more, I've included an email and phone number. We'd love to set up some time to walk through what that looks like, what that means for you. And secondarily, I wanted to hit on, Harry, what's coming out from the Microsoft team.
Yeah, this is the good stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
So for anyone that's familiar with remote desktop services, today, remote desktop services requires virtual machines for essentially each and every role in the architecture. So what that means is for even the smallest of environments, you have to have at least 2 virtual machines running at all times. And in some cases, for larger environments, at a minimum of 3. Well, now what the Microsoft RDS team has done is they've kind of re-architected RDS in general, especially for optimizing for the cloud. And now they're providing essentially all of the quote-unquote management roles for RDS, so your connection broker, your gateway server, web access server, and they're making those PaaS services, or platform as a service, web services. So ultimately, the only thing that's going to be dedicated to the end user is the session host as a virtual machine. Now, what this means is that we're going to be able to lower the cost ultimately. So per user, Microsoft is targeting $15 per user per month for a full remote desktop. And in this model, that remote desktop can be a session-based environment, or it can be a full Windows 10 client. So that's a game changer as well, something that's going to be available. Another thing that's coming is an HTML5 browser-based client. So today, when you remote in via RDP, you're connecting through a client. Well, now moving forward, you can access individual apps or a full remote desktop experience straight from the browser. So this is really just going to simplify the user experience. So those things combined with enhanced security, we really see the remote workspace or workspace as a service really evolving in 2018, and we're going to be a part of that by enabling this multi-tenant type of model from Microsoft. And again, the goal is to really drive down the cost, so there's a lower barrier for entry for the end user, and then we're going to help make our partners more profitable.
Well, there you go. All right. Hey, and Brian, can you stay on? Because I'd like you to participate in some of the back and forth of the webinars. Is your time okay up until 1 p.m. by chance?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry.
Okay. Let me click on, there we go. Okay, so we move on, and we're going to get to a slide that's kind of a roll-up slide next that has a number of topics, and we'll hear from Grace and Thomas back, and then we open it up for freeform along with some predictions. But in terms of the managed security solution providers, so this is the new thing, a couple of things. This took off in 18. And the simple example is Joe Panettiere created a subsite on this topic, as he tends to do, and it's heavily trafficked, and so there's your answer. We can measure it. An opportunity that I want to present to the SMB Nation members, if you will, you people who are on this call today, is to let us know if you'd like to be considered for a small focus group that we're doing on December 12th in Sunnyvale, California at Fortinet, and it's going to be the afternoon. So we're going to have lunch, then we're going to have a 90-minute session. I definitely need people who will be in person, and I want to talk about that. You know, if you're thinking about how to advance your career, how to be a thought leader, how to, you know, it's the old argument why we go to workshops and why we go to conferences. You get out and circulate. I've got one individual who's going to fly in from Reno for that day. So if you're not in the Bay Area, think about it. If you're in California, or, you know, good golly, Miss Molly, flights from Seattle are like $79 each way to San Jose. Think about it. And you will meet other thought leaders as well as the executives at Fortinet. And then I have 2 slots online. And so each participant, so it's 10 participants, 5 online and 5 in person. Each participant will receive a UTM device that's worth $600 for your time and participation. And I'm surprising Jenny over in the radio control room. Jenny didn't know this. She hasn't seen the slide deck. So Jenny, you're going to get bombarded with emails starting about right now for people who are going to have a subject line that says in person or online. And Jenny, I'll work with you on how we select those individuals. Certainly the in-person one will take priority. That's my biggest need. And then the online, maybe we'll throw the names on an Excel spreadsheet and use a random number generator and pick a row. But you'll get this deck if for some reason you don't write this down, or if you want to make a middle note, it's Jennifer Hallmark, Jennifer H at smbnation.com. One more word about what this focus group is. It's not engineering. Okay, it's not engineering, and I want to give you some perspective. When we worked with Fortinet to design the focus group, we're not doing what we did with Ben Yarborough at Calyptix a few years ago, and some of the SBS MVPs were involved out of North Carolina with Calyptix, and they're a security company. That was an engineering focus group. That was an engineering opportunity. This is much closer to what we did with CA, or Computer Associates, one spring up in Islandia, New York. Maybe some of you were there, where we had a pre-day that was a focus group that had a facilitator, and it was more about partner programs. It was more about messaging, the four-letter word marketing, and so on. So this is Fortinet reaching out into the community based on a survey we did, and trying to figure out how to get more mind share in the community, how to be a good citizen in the community, and how to really embrace and work with you guys. So shoot an email to Jenny. Jenny, I suspect you're probably already getting some. Sorry about that, Jenny. I caught you off guard on that one. Okay, so this and that. Our paradigm in 2018 is going to be math and analytics. And by that, I don't mean to devalue or disregard content, because I'm a writer. I do 1 or 2 blogs a week. Yes, words are my friend. Typing is my friend. Always will be. However, I think the game has changed on a lot of fronts, and you even saw Brian mention it in one of his bullet points about predictive analytics. In fact, Brian, before I get into an opportunity on analytics for people next quarter, let's do a double click on that bullet point about predictive analytics, if you don't mind, and what you're coming out with. What does that mean for you? Well,
so it's really all about the data that we can capture. So there's so much data that we can capture while running RDS in the cloud. And it's really about taking that data and then being able to use that data to make the solution smarter. So it's smarter to save in cost. It's smarter to provide a better SLA, a better uptime without any issues. And so the more that we can use that data to correlate and predict what's going to happen in the future, the more we're going to be able to make our partners profitable and provide a better experience for the end user.
Thank you. Folks, if you want to click over to smbnation.com, look over on the right or look at the top and see the MSP Tech Talk Winter Quarter banner ad. That's a free series of 6 classes. So as you know, last year we had spring semester and fall semester. We've now switched to a quarter system, so we have winter quarter coming up. And I am doing a lecture, I believe in the middle of the quarter, on analytics. And what analytics means for that day is the 5 things that you can do as an MSP with tools you already own. And it's very simple, but not many people do it. I'll give you a great example is MailChimp. And in MailChimp, send out a frickin' A/B test headline. We do. You would be amazed at what audiences respond to. The audience is going to tell you in the election of the A headline or the B headline of your email. It's usually a 4-hour election period with 50% of your audience in the winner goes to the remaining 50% of your audience. And again, you would be amazed as to what basically sells to the reader and what doesn't. That's what I mean. Hopefully you'll join us for MSP Tech Talk, and we'll certainly have 90 minutes of analytics. Recently gave this lecture to the IAMCP, a Microsoft partner trade group in Philadelphia. So hopefully it was well received and not treated like, you know, some kind of estate planning lecture, which is probably the last place they wanted to be that day. Grace and Thomas, you're up with DevOps. I always have that joke, Grace, that two developers walk into a bar. Developers are the new rock stars. And so maybe if you could define what DevOps are. They certainly get the high salaries now. And then, Grace, we have a few minutes to talk about the product you just released that integrates with Autotask. So shout out to you. Go for it.
Great. So we are Slinger, and we are a platform that specializes in integrating and orchestrating data across multiple cloud solutions. So when we look at DevOps as a topic, you know, we basically baked in the ability to eliminate DevOps entirely, and along with it, 80% of the complexity of creating a custom application. So when we look at market opportunities, we can size a market. It can be small-ish, and it's still interesting enough for us to participate because we're not going through a start-from-scratch code environment. We are a low-code platform that allows us to put products and services into market quickly. When we discussed the strategy for how we were going to take these custom or packaged solutions to market, we naturally landed in the managed services space because whether or not MSPs are today experts in software and in software as a service, they certainly are the trusted advisor sort of for all things technical for many companies. So it's our goal to work with the population of MSPs who are on that trajectory toward going up the value chain from network and telephony types of solutions all the way to trusted advisor of a complete corporate environment, whether that means, you know, hardware, software, network, security, etc. In light of that, we had noticed in the Autotask community that the Autotask community has been asking for a Slack bot for 2.5 years. And we have done a significant
And Grace, can you define Slack for our audience? Some people don't know what Slack is, if you don't mind. Okay, so Slack is, to many, they consider it just another messaging application. But what Slack is really endeavoring to do is to be the interface into all of your data for transactional purposes. And by that I mean I can put a bot into my chat team, and that bot can direct data into Autotask or into any of the other applications I might want to connect to it. And this lets people, for transactional purposes, not, you know, reroute their day into an application when they're spending most of their day in their collaboration tool. But yet, when it's a stand-up meeting or sort of a management situation, you still have that online browser-based interface to work through. So for us, for people that use Slack, they statistically live in it, right? Statistically, they're spending 8 to 10 hours a day in Slack, and now we can allow people that use Slack with Autotask to create tickets in Slack that go into Autotask. They can create notes that get assigned to tickets. They can assign tickets, reassign tickets, retrieve tickets. So literally use Slack as a mobile app even, and a transactional app, and drive the content that they need straight into Autotask with with relative ease. So Beth, cool. I don't know if you want to add anything more to that, Thomas. Yeah, Thomas, go ahead. We haven't heard from you, sir.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. You know, I think Grace tipped it out perfectly. And you know, I come from the unified communications space, and there's always a lot of interest in adding telephony and communication capabilities into apps. But kind of where this is going, you know, next generation, where the evolution is people want their apps in their communication stream, and the preferred tool of now is really Slack. So it's exciting for being with Slinger to be able to bring the application into the communication tool that you already know and love, and the bot that we have, connecting with Autotask is really just the stepping off point. So that's where you start. But with Slinger, an MSP could start with using Autotask and Slack, but then they could add QuickBooks integration or inbound calling, pop-ups with customer account recognition, all without having to swivel chair from app to app to app to app. The stats I've most recently read are the average information worker is using 8 to 12 different apps a day to get their job done, and that's consuming 60 minutes per day just to manage configurations amongst those apps. So being able to stay and work with a centralized communications tool like Slack and then have a unified bot that can connect all those, we see as the future of work, to be smarter, more efficient, more productive.
There we go. And Grace, why don't you verbalize and then shoot me an email with the URL link for your Autotask product so I can get it in the thank you letter tomorrow. But go ahead and verbalize how people can find you and learn more about this new solution.
So if you go to slinger.io, SLINGR.io, there is a Autotask SlingerBot for Autotask link off of the homepage, and you can just hit the Add to Slack button to start your free trial. It's under the Slinger Apps tab. And between you and me and the light bulbs, we're not billing yet, so that free trial, I think we were listing it at 2 weeks. It may go on a bit longer than that. And ultimately, the cost will be $10 per user per month.
Okie dokie. So, folks, we'll get you the link off for that, and we'll hear more from Slinger in 2018. Let me move on to the salary survey results, and I'm going to verbalize it for the purposes of this webinar. So we leave a little bit of time for open-ended questions, a shout-out to the NFL in terms of a couple of teams, and so on. But our recent salary survey, so I got my chops busted at the Channel Pro event back in early November. Grace remembers the event in New Jersey. I stayed over in New York for a couple of days of business, and someone came up to the booth and said, Harry, we're happy to fill out your survey, but you never published the results. And I was like, what? What's this? And so I'm going to get that out in the next day, but I did want to just kind of verbalize a couple of things. And remember earlier in the webinar where I said SMB Nation's in its 19th year? Listen to this, okay? This is some interesting correlation stuff, and then I'll give you how much money we all make. So first of all, college degree in our community, 45% have a 4-year degree. That's kind of blows away the national average, not surprising. And then 15% have a graduate degree. Once again, kind of blows away the national average. This is a warning sign. What I'm going to quote you next is our age. By far, if you look at the bell curve, and I'm going to send you the link to look at all this, but by far the majority of us are 51 to 58 years old. And you see this when you go to events like Channel Pro, and that's a huge concern that we're not having enough babies, guys, who want to take care, who want to get involved in IT as we know it. 82% of you are the owner-operator. That's good. Here we go. How many years have you been in the IT industry? 16-plus years represented over 71% of the responses. Now, I resemble this. I resemble all of this, you guys. I mean, educated. I'm in my 50s. I have that kind of time in the industry. That's why that was so interesting to go to timeanddate.com and kind of run the math on where we're at with SMB Nation. On the left-hand, experience is good. On the right-hand, we need young people. And I'll just leave it at that. Let's get to how much we're making, because everybody always wants to know who's making what. And I'm just scrolling down. So in terms at the company level, the bell curve landed, it's kind of two income company revenue ranges. 17% between $500,000 and $1 million, and 22% between $1 million and $3 million. So basically, the bulk of our community is between $500,000 and $3 million. And I guess if I were to dig deeper into that data, the way it's skewed, I think it would be safe to say that the average SMB Nation members entity makes $1 million a year. That's a little bit conservative, but because of where I put the break point, most of us do not make $3 million, but the relevant range is $500,000 to $3 million, and why don't we agree that it's $1 million a year on average for the company revenue? And then finally, how much do you make as an individual? This has not changed. This has stood the test of time through the recession and quite frankly, since we've been doing surveying. The good news is you're between $100,000 and $125,000. You make significantly more than your father did when he worked at the shipyard. So that's the good news. You're self-made. You're in the low six figures. The bad news is that number has stayed static, right? So with the passage of time, and wage inflation and seniority. I understand labor rates aren't going up as fast as we would like them to, but the point is that's a little bit of a concern that stayed stagnant. For example, when affordability of housing has skyrocketed and essentially incomes have not kept up. But on the other hand, your income didn't go down in the recession, so you can't have it all. But that's not a bad place to be. Jenny, over in the radio control room, I know Keith Nelson was going to try to join us. I'm not sure I see his name on the roster today. Jenny, do we have Keith Nelson for the NFL predictions? I know he was going to be challenged with a prior commitment to join us towards the end. Keith and I have an ongoing battle every Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night with NFL football. He's a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan, and we'll have to wait for the Super Bowl time to have Keith back on to do a little bit of bantering. But I will tell you this: that do not expect the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl this year. We have had some tough injuries. Mark Ingram, an SMB Nation member and SBSer out of Vancouver, BC, treated me recently to the Atlanta game in Seattle. I appreciate that. And then this weekend at 5 p.m. Pacific, we have Philadelphia. That could get ugly early because Philadelphia is a hell of a team. With that said, I'm going to move us on to forecast, and then this is where I want everybody to pitch in. And Grace, I'm going to cross the yellow line. I'm going to go off the rails. I wrote down 3 forecasts for 2018 that I think are going to impact the channel. Number 1 on my list, and guys, once you get past the giggles, I'm deadly serious about this, but it's going to be the cannabis industry and the cannabis dispensaries that, in my eyes, are a legitimate business. California comes online live for recreational on January 1st. And boy, howdy, that is a real industry with real cash and real IT needs, ranging from compliance to security. We already have a handful of states that are recreational legal. A couple states, and then we have more than a handful of states that are medical legal. But, you know, once you get past the high school jokes, I'm telling you, there's a real opportunity here. Put it on your one to watch. In 18, I am forecasting IoT not this year. I have been to more IoT lectures and the workshop tour this year where we are still talking about what is it. And again, you can disagree, but we're just not there. And I'll tell you why we're not there, in my opinion, is I really think online retail has absolutely hit its stride. If you look at the reports on CNBC the other day about Cyber Monday, Amazon alone did $6.5 billion in revenue on Cyber Monday. That is here. And just go to your local Sears store to see how that plays out. Grace, predictions for 2018? You want to throw 1 or 2 out, and then we'll go to Thomas, and we'll go to Brian.
Oh, pick me last. Thomas, you go.
Okay. All right, Thomas, you got anything that's burning in your brain for 2018? I mean, dude, we have an economy at 3.3%, record low unemployment, a stock market record. What say you for 18?
Oh wow, 18. I think like the Datto Autotask. I think we're going to see some more smart consolidation where people want to get more done with less fuss. And I think that's going to continue with the private equity kind of getting in there and helping that along, right? Because the whole idea of people using so many tools is just an inefficiency that's primed for disruption. So I think we're going to see more of that through 2018.
By the way, I would agree. Thank you. I obviously didn't write that on my list, but I think we are going to see consolidation. There's the whole argument that the SMB technology sector is a mature sector, and that's not necessarily bad, but it does tend to lead to consolidation. So I would concur. Brian, give it your best shot. From your perspective, what are you thinking about in 18 other than you got a product roadmap and Microsoft has an update?
Sure. So let's see. I've got a couple probably in industry and a couple out. Blockchain. So blockchain is probably one that's been talked about quite a bit, especially this year. I think moving into next year, it's going to be an even bigger conversation in the IT world and across all industries, really. And with that, I can see virtual currencies, cryptocurrencies, kind of continuing to creep and cause a stir in kind of the traditional financial markets. And then I guess specific to our world is AI and how can AI impact profitability. So you'll see a lot more partners starting to engage with various vendors who are building AI into the channel practices. So those are some good ones. I mean, outside of that, if we want to go, we'll probably continue to see some off the rails Trump tweets. How about that?
All right. Hey, Grace, we got 30 seconds left, and we have one comment. We don't have a whole lot of questions today, but we have one comment I'll read. We do have a hard stop at 1. Grace, take us out with a prediction if you have one, and then I'll read one of the reader comments.
I do not have one. I really don't have one for 2018 because I don't know exactly when things are going to happen. But what's happening next, as with all technology, is that people are getting disintermediated. The technology is coming closer and closer to the user, and I think companies that recognize it will do very well, and companies that don't will not. So I guess my one prediction is I think we'll see some large company failures because they had the miss that Harry talked about at the beginning of the call. They didn't see it coming. They didn't see that as a CIO or CTO, their job was more than managing Microsoft, Oracle, and one other vendor as a job. And their job was really to orchestrate the thousands of solutions that were available in the marketplace and decide how to bring them into their environment. So I think we'll see some large company failures on that front.
There we go. And Rick Caravu has a comment, and then Jenny will have to unfortunately bring this to an end, but Rick says in the NFL, the Eagles and Vikings will go to the Super Bowl with the Vikings winning it all on their home field. So guys, you heard it here first. So Brian, Jay, Jenny, Grace, Beck, Thomas, everybody, thank you so much for participating today, and we'll see you later in the month. A couple more webinars coming up before the end of the year. Have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.